Hello, everyone.
All right, Hayley. So Hayley is the head designer and creative director for her own bridal line, Hayley Paige. And I know it was your dream growing up to be a bridal dress designer. And so many of us have dreams of what we want to be when we grow up, but that doesn't always turn into a reality. So I want to understand, how did you have this dream as a child and then actually make it happen? What's your story?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's a very long story, but ultimately I've been very invested in a creative life. And growing up, my grandmother taught me to sew and bake in the kitchen, and I was surrounded with Disney princesses, and so like classic case of a girl growing up in the 90s. And I always saw it as like a fantasy and a dream. And in my reality, I grew up as a doctor's daughter, and I thought, well, I've got to follow a very formulaic path. So I was always struggling with this kind of left and right brain of how do I connect the two? So I think one of the most important things is to bridge the gap between your dreams and your reality. And knowing in the lack of resources, you can always be resourceful. Of course, we all have our doubts, and we have these moments where we're not sure what we're going to be and or how to get there. And ultimately, we know that the thought process does not define who you are and what you actually do. So luckily for me, I let that dream still flourish, and I was always very involved in my imagination, even though it wasn't my reality, and I never let go of that. So as I was learning my academics, I was always still being very playful in my world and in my environment. And when I got to Cornell, my gymnastics coach took me around the campus, and he's like, at Cornell, you can do anything in the world. And he's like, what would you want to be if you could do anything? And I was like, well, really, a bridal gown designer. And he's like, did I tell you we have a textile and apparel fiber science major? And I was like, what is fiber science? And take me to it.
So what is fiber science?
So fiber science is a study of textiles. So when you think about an astronaut suit or a fireman's gear, and how like the textiles can really be made to protect or made to have some type of functionality to it, it's really a much more mathematical and technical approach to design. And I was coming to Cornell thinking I would do pre-med. And what was great is I could kind of straddle the two and say, okay, well, I can be really playful and creative over here. And then I can also learn a lot about science and math and like kind of be one foot in the sea, 1 foot on shore. And then
Taking pre-med classes as well?
Yes, but a lot of the curriculum overlapped. So it's not like I was like, oh, I'm double major. It was like I was kind of cheating it in a way, but you can't really cheat at Cornell. It's like impossible. It's so hard. But it was great because they had like these incredible, intense, like artistic classes and portfolio classes, but then they also had marketing and entrepreneurship. And what happened to me was that it built this whole viable profession in my brain, and it was the process of connecting the dreams to the reality. And it's like I kind of envisioned that part in Frozen where she's like building the bridge and she's like walking into her like ice castle, and it's like that really was part of my process. Is it's like you build it as you go along, but you never want to lose touch between the two things. You always want to still have that imaginative approach while also working on the basics.
So what happened once you graduated?
Well, I decided not to take my med exam. It was like, ooh, sparkle. So that was a pretty easy choice, but I ended up getting a job right out of college in New York City working for a designer. And it was a great first step because I had no previous idea of, okay, what would my life be moving to New York City? And like immediately I was like, oh, Carrie Bradshaw, yeah, let's do this. And like I arrived and it was nothing like that. It was a little bit more of like Devil Wears Prada, but in like a good way, because you've got to like get thrown in, and that's where your grit comes from. And you really can't have a diamond without pressure, So that was a really amazing experience, but it wasn't heavily focused in bridal, which is what I really wanted to do. And so while I was at Cornell, while I was in New York City, I was kind of, again, like multitasking my life. And so realizing where I could gain knowledge, where I could learn. And I started a business with a former alum named Brittany Haas. And so we were contemplating, do we need to get MBAs in this? Do I need to be a doctor of fashion to be considered, like I'm on it? So luckily we started this business, and I got a huge experience in like pitching and like how to not sweat during like an interview, and like all these little things that are like super important about being approachable, but then also taken seriously, especially in a world that seems very sparkly and surface level. And then I was also working at a company called Purcell of Boston, which was my first step in the door to bridal. And they're a major house of brands. And what was particularly interesting was that their business model was quite intense. They're almost a Fortune 500 company. They were partly owned by David's Bridal. And I learned so much about like distribution, manufacturing, overseas supply chain, all these things that really go into the mechanics and the multifaceted world of design, because it's not just a bodacious ball gown. You know, there's so much that goes into it. So that was kind of my first segue from Cornell into New York City.
And was it always your dream to have your own line with your name on it, sparkling everywhere?
Yeah, well, totally. Yeah, again, it was like in this category of my brain, because I think we all have a tendency to like see things in black or white or extremes. And so I had a habit of, especially when I was younger, putting the dream of being a bridal designer in like, oh, I want to be Batman. Don't worry about it. You know, and like I really put it in that category a lot. And so I'm someone that really required a lot of validation and a lot of practice. And I don't know if it had something to do with also being a gymnast growing up, where it's like, okay, you want to learn a backflip. Well, you're not just going to be born doing backflips. You've got to learn how to do it. And so in my mind, at least I knew that it was something I could learn. And even if in my mind there was a doubt that like, maybe I wasn't born a great designer, but I can certainly learn it, that was something that really helped me convince myself that it's a viable profession. And it's just important to remember that you can have these doubts, you can have these moments where you're unsure and insecure, but you don't want to like unpack and live there. You want to really let it motivate you and allow you to kind of compartmentalize it in a way that goes more towards the reality.
So then what happens next? You're working at Purcell of Boston, and then what happens?
And then, okay, so
to the good stuff, Hayley.
Good stuff. What was great about working with a former colleague and friend, running a business and everything, I realized that I was super bad at financials and economics and like real components to business building, but I was great at the creative and I liked being social. And so she and I kind of played into our strengths. And I thought that if I ever wanted to start my own label and really do this, I would need a capital investor and somebody that understood the business and had strengths where I had weaknesses. And that was one of a big lesson that I learned really early on, is that you don't have to be everything to everyone, and it is so good to know what your strengths are and to supplement those with people that are specialized, and to really build, again, the culture and the idea that you can operate as a team. There doesn't have to be just one hero to a business. And so I was heavily pitching ideas for a label to multiple companies, but this one called JLM Couture is a bit more of an intimate brand, and they were known for bringing in designers young and kind of cultivating and helping flourish their aesthetic. And at the time, this was back in about 2010, and I was 24 years old, so I was like very hungry and like, please look at my designs, you know. And it's
how do you get that meeting?
So I pretty much stalked him for like a good 4 months, and
showing up at Starbucks downstairs in their building.
No, not like that. But I got the contact to his main sales director, and I continuously emailed her and let her know about my updates, because I was a young designer and experience is a major part of growing in that industry to be taken seriously for sure. And so I would say, okay, well, this just happened. And then I ended up getting the Marchesa label for a boutique collection that was manufactured in China. And I basically went to China for about 3 months to really work on this collection. And I realized that I could really do it. I finally got the gumption to say, like, it's my time. And I remember sending her this email and saying, okay, you know, I've got this brand new collection under my belt while also designing for other collections under the Purcell of Boston label. And I was like, I have a great idea. Let me come in. I promise I won't underpromise and overdeliver. And luckily I got this meeting and I came in, and I knew in that minute there wasn't going to be an opportunity for a first impression. So I brought an entire business plan with me. And it was like, here's the collection, here's the price point, here's the distribution, here's every single piece of the collection. And it was really like I was selling myself, but also selling the idea of how we could really innovate within his business. Like, and I explained, this is why you need me. So
what was different about what you were pitching and presenting to him that wasn't happening in the bridal world at that point?
I feel at the time there was a general consensus that the bridal industry was antiquated and that brides out there were shopping and being told what to do. And just like we heard about how you really want the client to direct your story, I felt like I could be the voice for that girl and say, there really isn't that much versatility. There's not that much fun in bridal. Like, we have an opportunity to really come in here and create a movement. And I was really lucky because this was during the exact time that Instagram came out. And there was just a wonderful sense of timing and momentum that came together. And I do think that timing is one of the most important things to be mindful of in your career, and to be really in touch with your instinct. Because a lot of times we try to, again, put it into a category or a box and say, oh, now's not the time for me. Or this is going to take too long, or oh, there's too many designers in the industry right now. How could I possibly make waves or make a splash when there's already Vera Wang and Monique Lillier? Like, that's so intimidating. But luckily, again, I didn't let those fears or that doubt curb my enthusiasm. And luckily, he was like, this is pretty impressive. Sounds like you're not just into design, but you're into business building. And he hired me almost a day later. So it was exciting.
What was that feeling like?
It was like being at Disneyland on Christmas with champagne. It was like all the things, your favorite things together. And what was even crazier is I had an idea for a label name, and I never once really said, okay, Hayley Paige, because that's my name, and I never really made that identity connection. And he was like, I really love your name. And I was like, oh, thanks, my mom, real creative there. She picked it. And he's like, I think it should be called Hayley Paige. And I can't even explain the feeling. Being a little kid, growing up the way I did, and being just obsessed with design and Disney princess, all that stuff. It was just like, there is no way that this is happening right now. So I had a hard time even realizing it. And to this day, I still have these moments where I'm like, I can't believe that I basically play dress up for a living. I mean, there's a lot of hustle that goes into it. I just like to focus more on that, but it's crazy.
Well, you definitely show the glamorous life on Instagram. And for those of you who don't follow Hayley Paige on Instagram, definitely follow her, because you see a lot of sparkles, her designing. It's pretty incredible. And I want to hear a little bit about how you've really built and cultivated this audience on Instagram, because that's really helped to catapult your brand, and you have a cult following now from it.
Yeah, Instagram it's so crazy to really think about it. And I know a lot of people underestimate and say, oh, it's so much work, and oh, I don't get how it applies to my business. And they kind of write it off as this thing that's very surface level, and everybody's, it's their highlight reel, and of course it is. But one of the coolest things is it's a place for you to really control your narrative. And it's also an invitation for people to feel comfortable. And so one of the things that I really thought about how I wanted Instagram to not only connect my personality to my brand, but connect me to the client, is that I wanted people to come to my page and feel like they belong there, and that there's something for them to feel excited by and dazzled by. And I was really in touch with my why. Like, why am I doing this, and how do I want people to feel? What am I serving them, except, sparkle? Like, what else can they take away? And so I wanted them to feel connected to the product. And to this day, that really is, it's kind of like your mission statement for a business. Instagram, I take that seriously. And I know this is probably the most overused word in the English language right now, but authentic. It's the idea of just really being yourself there as much as you can, and also showing some vulnerability so that people can feel that they can connect with you. They know you're not perfect, even though you're posting all these great filtered pictures. It's like there is a lot of substance there, and there's purpose behind what we do. And it is really easy to write bridal and fashion off as this surface level, what are you really doing? Okay, you're making pretty things. But for me, it's like such an emotional purchase, and there's such a quality of investment in the girl who's a bride, she's getting married. It's like this life-changing event, and for me, I don't take it lightly. It's like this major connection, and it's a point of reference to feel continuously inspired, but also for you to be a great listener and know that for me, I'm always going to be a student of design. I don't have all the answers, and my consumer, my customer, and my muse is right there in front of me. Like, you better shop for her. So to this day, I still respond to every single direct message. I still try to get through almost every comment. It depends. Like, if it's a 12,000 comment, I can't. But I really try, and luckily
He has 1 million followers now on Instagram.
Yeah, thank you. They're like the best. Thanks. We're gonna take a group selfie after this, so don't think you're getting out of that. But yeah, it's just been an incredible thing that's happened, and I really do almost see it as like the internet, and a totally new way for you to be accessible to your person and the people that you're trying to serve, and for you to be that close to the action. And I say that as like, okay, well, what are you looking for? Tell me about your wedding, just to be present. And even in the case where it's a girl that's out of my budget and she's maybe not my bride, she watches Say Yes to the Dress and is like, I'm from Brazil. And it's like, this still is an opportunity for me to be an advocate for her and for her to feel like she's part of my culture, even if she's maybe not a buying consumer.
So I have a more serious question now.
Okay.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
Oh, yes. Burnout is fun. Super fun. The one thing I'll say is burnout, okay, learn when to rest, when you're tired to rest and give yourself a minute, but not quit. Because no matter what, you will have periods of darkness. And again, like I said, you just cannot unpack and live there. But give yourself a minute to recalibrate and do inventory and really take note of what motivates you. And for me, the motivation is so easy. Like I feel again like I'm cheating because it's this girl and she's bright-eyed and so excited to be getting married, and she just wants to be dazzled by a dress that like highlights and enhances and looks fabulous on her. And it's like I bring it back to that customer and that girl, and I feel like, again, I have this incredible opportunity and an accountability to her and to say like, girl, I got you, don't you worry. And so the moment that I feel myself kind of feeling like a gloomy goose, it's so easy for me to kind of snap out of it and say, look what I get to do for a living. Hayley, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And I bounce back. And that's also part of the reason on Instagram I actively choose to tell a narrative that is positive and that's enlightening and it feels inspiring, because that is my mission, that is my job. And even though sometimes I have moments of self-reflection and doubt, I don't want to project that and put that baggage on my client.
That's very interesting. So I want to know, you were able to start your own line, but now you've developed other lines as well, bridesmaids dresses, evening wear. What is the process of doing so?
So our most recent endeavor is a licensing deal with Hearts on Fire Diamonds. And this was like our first big branch outside of business and manufacturing of design. And it was super exciting because it was an opportunity to not only be a brand ambassador and understand more of the influence side of social media and personality, but also design an entirely new landscape of hardware. And it also made me realize that you don't have to limit your consumer base. In bridal, you tend to get pigeonholed. And even as a designer, it's so hard for me to really be taken seriously in the bigger world of fashion. And I'm very cognizant of that, but I also realize that it's okay to stay in your lane a little bit. But derivative branding gives an opportunity to grow like nothing else. So since we launched Hayley Paige, I've taken on 2 other bridal brands at different price points. We now design an exclusive collection for Kleinfeld via Say Yes to the Dress. We have a bridesmaid line. I have Flower Girls, Mother of the Bride. We're getting the whole party going. And then we most recently, well, actually, this was like 2 years ago, but we launched an emoji app called Holy Matrimoji, which really has nothing to do with bridal. But I love animation, again, and illustration. And I was like, I feel like it'd be really amazing to have an emoji app that really taps into the language of the bride and how she feels this overtaxed state of emotions. And there's like a humorous aspect to it. And it's a place for her to kind of go and have a sense of humor in the wedding planning process because it can be so overwhelming. And so we did that. And it's like, yeah, that has nothing to do with me. And I have no idea how to code or develop an app, but I learned as I went along. And it became like a great tool for marketing that was different than what other bridal designers were doing. And so I guess the message is that you do want to be open to other areas of derivative branding, but you don't want to spread yourself so thin that you lose touch of your message. So that actually is a current challenge I'm working on because we have a very small company still. And so I kind of feel like a caffeinated squirrel most days. And it's like, where's the priority?
Well, what is your day like?
It's very unpredictable because it's anywhere from something personality related where, I'm showing up and I'm, telling a story or something like that, or I'm going to a trunk show and I'm being accessible to my brides directly. But a day in the office, it's just so complicated because we're at various stages of the development stage as well as the production stage. And it's so multifaceted because you really do have to, wear these millions of hats, but then also know where to delegate some of that specialized work. And I would say that is one of the biggest challenges right now for me, is to know when to relinquish the control on something. And it's like, even though I know I can do all the sketches requested, I don't have time to do 500 sketches right now. So let's outsource that, to my assistant, and then we'll work over here on, building the next thing.
What's the most recent thing you've delegated?
The most recent thing I've delegated is, this is fun. So yesterday, I've had like a big filming week. We did an ad campaign for Hearts on Fire Diamonds. I did 2 full days of Say Yes to the Dress filming, and I've had 1 office day. And so if you can imagine that 1 office day, I was like, where do I get to first? I don't even know where to start.
How many emails did you have in your inbox after being out for 3 days?
Not as many DMs. The DMs, they keep growing and growing. But, it's funny. This is such a tangent, but one of the best things I can say right now is that I have a great partner in my life who is okay with me being around the clock available to a device. And it's so important to set screen time boundaries in your relationship, and in even with your friendships, because there's nothing worse than catching up with an old friend and she's sitting across from you on her phone. And so you really do have to know how to separate it, and there really is a nuance and a balance to it. But luckily for me, I try to designate at least every hour I'm checking something, which is crazy, but it's so worth it because it is my customer.
Do you sleep at night?
I do. I actually sleep. It's good stuff. I get to bed and I'm zonked, so it's good. But yeah, to answer your original question, the average day is very complex. And I would say a very small percentage of it is actually creative genius and design. But over the years, I think I've learned how to really maximize the time that I'm doing that.
So you are currently on the cover of the Not magazine because you are engaged and you've had this incredible career. So congratulations.
Thank you.
What was that moment?
Thank you.
What was that moment like when they called you or emailed you and said they wanted you to be on the cover?
I was like, who dat? No way. I really had a hard time connecting that. I've never seen myself as I'm going to be on the cover of the magazine someday. I definitely wanted my dresses in the magazine. And so that's been a really perplexing thing, because it's wonderful to be the voice of your brand, but then you also have a social responsibility as well. And I do want to be a role model, and I want to stand for something that's aspirational and exciting for women and encouraging. And that has really been something that I've always come back to. But when I saw the magazine cover for the first time, for some reason, I saw my inner child, and she was like, what? No way, it's crazy. And she's like, but all these little insecurities that you have, they're still kind of there in a way. And I love that you can still be in touch with your inner child and say, I'm still kind of that same girl. And that helps me very much stay connected to my craft and to the person I'm serving, and also not get so out into outer space where you're not approachable or relatable to people anymore. But then it also is forward thinking, because I think of my future self and would she be proud of me and the decisions I'm making now? So everything is kind of like a trinity of self, and realizing the most important thing is your mindset in the present.
I love that.
That makes sense.
No, it does. My last question for you, and again, I wish we had more time here today with everyone. What advice can you share with entrepreneurs who are here, who are just starting out in their journey? Anything that you wish you knew when you were first starting?
I think never underestimate the power of hard work, because there's really no substitute for it. And there will be those days that are grueling and you're just putting in the hours and you're slaving away. And there's always that little question in your mind, is this going to be worth it? Is there going to be a payoff? And I feel like there's really so much heart that goes into the hustle. And know that in your heart, you're going a different race. You're in your own special space. And give yourself time to really appreciate what you have to offer. And never underestimate yourself, ever. Because the sky's the limit.
You bet. The sky is the limit. Well,
Sparkle sky.
yes. So be sure to follow Hayley on Instagram. You can see all of her sparkly dresses and a day in her life. And it is exhausting to watch because she is doing so much. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us here
Wait,
today.
we need our selfie
Oh, yeah.
first. Hold on. Wait, I might have to do a video because it's going to be too hard to get everybody in.
Do you want everyone sitting or standing?
Oh, maybe we should do like a wave. Is this crazy? Am I being
All right,
crazy?
let's do
I don't
it.
care. Okay. All right. I'm going to start this way, and then we're going to finish over there. So I'm going to go like this. This is an example. Okay. Hopefully I don't fall off this thing. Okay. Look where we are. Woo! Okay, one more time with some panache, okay? Let me fix my hair. Okay, ready? Look where we are. Go Big Red.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Hayley.
Thank you so much for having me.